Good afternoon. I'm Rich Donohue. I recognize many of you. I'd like to meet the rest of you. Just one caveat, I've got a little bit of a cold, so if I don't shake hands, don't be offended. We can bump elbows or something like this. It's an honor to speak to this audience, in particular, those of us focused on education, really a lot of talented people here, so it's always exciting and humbling. Thank you for moderating, Fritz, and thanks for the other presenters for taking the risk and sharing what you do. I'm going to start by giving you just a little bit of context. Yeah. So broadly, I built and helped build a program called New Maps Plus for the University of Kentucky, Department of Geography. It's fairly new. We started this about 4 or 5 years ago. And the idea was to have a program that focused on using open source mapping solutions, initially focused on the front end web mapping part of it. We offer classes on a 10-week schedule 4 times a year. What else did I write here? Oh yeah, I wrote this phrase this morning: boutique craft cartography with an informed practice of ethics. That sounds good. They often refer to it as the Kentucky flavor because our department is very heavily influenced by human geography and social theory, and so I'll weave that into this narrative a little bit. So the broad stroke of the curriculum kind of looks like this right now, I think, and my training and my background, thanks to UW-Madison, Professor Roth, more focused on the web cartography part. Kentucky helped really bring in the ethics, which I've symbolized with an icon of wind for some reason. But where I'm going kind of with this is the more of that back-end data processing and data wrangling part, which I'm symbolizing as a tumbleweed. We can talk about what that might mean. I'm going to highlight the tumbleweed, yeah. But starting with that front end again, so this is my love, my teaching. This is where I think I really shine. I'm a front end developer. I'll admit that right away. I love the web mapping part. I love JavaScript. So we have some very strong classes that emphasize this, and you can take a moment and read through the tools that we currently use to achieve that. Again, I think this is really important. I'm going to wax a little heady here for a moment. We do emphasize the role of thinking about maps deeply and looking at the history and the power they do and the work that maps do in the world. I've chose Jeremy Crampton as an icon for one of the classes, one of my intellectual heroes, former president of NACIS, I think. And then an icon of a potion for social impacts of mapping. And the thing about potions is they can heal or they can hurt. And that's just another idea I think about it, the pharmacon idea of maps and the responsibility that we have as map makers to keep track of that. So this is a current that runs through our classes, which I'm very, very proud to honor for the University of Kentucky. But this is where we're actually headed. We have a couple classes that do more of that back-end GIS data wrangling stuff. We have an initial one, map. All our classes are named map too. Isn't that really cool? Wow. Already 10? Oh gosh. Sorry. This is what I'm going to be talking about. This class in particular. So I was tasked with building this class. A lot of us know as cartographers, a lot of our work is data wrangling, merging stuff, getting the data visible so we can understand it and getting that into the front end. I went back and forth. Like I said, I'm a JavaScript person. I really kind of wanted to do it all with Node, but I realized it's not all about me. And I think that the Python stack is really key and important for all the students to learn. So this is what I dove in, and this is the kind of setup that we've settled on here. And at first, the Jupyter Notebook was just another text editing tool, but I've discovered it's actually a lot more than that. So if you don't know what interactive coding notebooks are, Jupyter is a web-based tool where you can write your code and run it immediately and kind of test out your ideas and your data flow in that. It also carries very nicely to be on the web, to a GitHub repository or some other platform to share. Yeah, you can follow that GIF. There's no Python package called NACIS out there, apparently, so. All right. Lots of benefits here. What I've loved about it, it documents our process of thinking through what we do with the data, and as a teacher, I was always quickly pulling together a data set, right, for a specific mapping project, but it was done, what, in maybe a GIS, or I was doing it in the spreadsheet system or something like this. And my students were often like, well, how did that nice data set get to us that we're using for this map example? I'm like, oh yeah, that's probably important. We should think about how the data gets there. Other benefits, it's a reproducibility thing. It makes the mapping more transparent, which I think is really important. I think it's easier to lie with maps when the data process is black boxed. So this kind of brings that into light. And it integrates well with other formats for sharing and collaboration, as I'll demonstrate in a moment. There are challenges. I'm not gonna hit us over the head with them. It's a technical thing. It's hard, like Alicia pointed out. The instructor has to learn a lot. It's another learning curve. It's not for everybody, and I understand that. And also, I'm growing to like Python more, but I'm still more JavaScripty, and I do find there's a lot of issues cross-platform and cross. There's always like some issues with the Python packages but that could be me. So 3 quick examples I want to highlight here. One of them is this process I said about getting data just in a good format to get into a web map, and you can use a spreadsheet, and a spreadsheet's a really good tool for us, as we know, when we all use that for pivot tables and this kind of thing. One of my students, very awesome, strong Python programmer, Joe, demonstrated for me initially. He's like, yeah, this is really cool how you showed us how to do this in Excel or something, but here's a notebook that actually does the same thing and outputs that CSV the way we need for our web map. So I was very excited to see that. I also encourage my students to build their own cheat sheets for themselves and to share with others. And so an example, one by one of my recent students, Mark Cruz, giving an awesome talk tomorrow. You should check it out. Built an amazing exploration of geopandas, and got captivated by it. And then it's up on his repo, and he just like shares it with me and shares it with the other students. So there's a learning and sharing and collaboration aspect to these notebooks that's really key. Finally, a third example is I'm very proud of this. We graduated my first cohort of master's students from our program earlier this July. And the product wasn't a written master's thesis. Like, we're a very applied program, and so the deliverable is a web map. But how do you share that with a couple other professors who aren't that technical, who aren't even cartographers? And this was a really interesting question. I didn't really know how we were going to do this, but because the notebooks were built in as part of that process, that they could, I had 10 from the beginning. I'm confusing the size, excuse me. I have plenty of time. As I was saying, the notebooks became this vehicle to facilitate a conversation where the students could communicate with the faculty very complex data processing issues and problems getting to the map. And it just made for a very effective, fun conversation instead of, well, here's the map, and then let's just talk about what it does. So the notebooks are another vehicle in terms of helping this educational process through in that way. I'll wrap up now. I want to say thanks to students, of course, and the instructors, the open source community for all the work, and University of Kentucky, NACIS, and Tacoma for hosting us. So, with that,
Questions for Rich?
Chris.
I just want to say the point you brought about transparency around the workflow, I think is really important, because even in my job with what I do now, I think that work is often invisible to people, and all that it's a lot of work to put into data wrangling and analysis and prep before you actually get to your map or visualization. And so I'd say kudos to making that process more transparent, because it helps you show people, yeah, this is actual work and this takes time. Many people don't know that or don't understand it.
Awesome. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you, Chris. Thanks. Yeah. Other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
So about a year ago, I was actually wrestling with the same question. So I was teaching Python, and I was looking down the barrel of a Jupyter notebook. And the thing that I've always hated about it is that it creates a JSON file. Like the Jupyter notebook is just a JSON file. And so what I've taken to doing is, I've personally taken to teaching Python in a text editor with a Python interpreter. And I was wondering if you could talk through like how you weighed those options and how you thought about the trade-offs between those two approaches.
Yeah, I'm probably gravitating more toward your model, and I know like there's Jupyter Lab, which a lot of my students like better than the straight-up notebooks. So, yeah, you can write the code in a text editor, or you can use the notebook. I guess I don't really care about that one. That one's like pick your tool that works. But where you were also kind of going where I wanted to go with it is I've been using a lot of flat files for a long time, like the JSON output thing. And I think more now the next step is to kind of get everything in a database, which is another technical hurdle. Because I have some students who are like, why aren't we just having this in a Postgres and querying it with SQL? And I'm like, I don't know. That's probably the best solution. So, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm really curious. I taught something like this and something like what Alicia's done, and now things like PyDeck and Bouquet and other sorts of more thematic visualization tools. Do you see this course as coming closer to a web visualization, web cartography class than it currently is in the future? Or do you see what do you see the future for JavaScript versus, like to really teach from the sort of web-first visualization versus going this route and exporting some really sophisticated stuff? Anyway, they're coming together in a way that I find surprising. So.
I agree completely. I guess that's another theme we could talk about is like the collapsing of the back-end process and the front-end process. One really cool thing that was coming out of this was a student realized that they had kind of made a mistake in the coding part of the Python and the data was wrong in the map, which sometimes you don't know if there's no semantic errors. It looks good. And it didn't, all he had to do was rerun the process and spit that back out for the front end. So it makes for a faster process there. The other thing I'm kind of pushing myself in the curriculum toward is getting away from the interactive mapping a little bit and getting more to like the visual storytelling aspect. And I do see a role for these notebooks in there as well, because you can output data that can go into an interactive web map if you want, but it could also spit out static maps and that could be part of a web page. And so there's a continuity there and a back and forth, I think, that's exciting for me at least. Yeah.
All right, we'll move forward with our next presenter.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fritz.